Welcome to InnerVision. This is Johnny J, and once again I'm going to tell you my mind about some things. But before, and for those of you, and I've known some of you during my lifetime that happen to be either lesbians or bisexuals or gay. I've even had some people like this in my family. So I'm going to talk about this, something I didn't know that I just found out, and it's coming from a blind perspective, because a lot of this world we don't see, we just hear from people. And if someone doesn't tell you something, or you're not digging to find out this, you just don't know. And then some people will try to purposely hide things from you, even though you're a sighted person, as many of the left-wing reporters have tried to hide things from the general population, because the media only wants you to know what they want you to know. But it's a different age now, and we have access to information that we didn't have before. So I want to let you know that InnerVision is a nonprofit. We work with physically challenged musical artists, and I have some information here. I'm going to figure out what happened to my information. Oh, yes, here it is. So I want to put this out there. So and I changed my calendar. I want you to know this information, and I probably should have had it ready before I started this. But I want you to be able to go to the website innervisionrecords.org. That's innervisionrecords.org to find out more about our nonprofit organization. And also, you can give us a call at 720-324-7278. That's 720-324-7278 to find out more about InnerVision and what we do as a nonprofit here in the state of Colorado, or specifically in Denver. Also, we've been running this campaign and if you haven't taken the census, that's going to come up on April the 1st. You can do it online. So do take the census, so you will be counted in this state of Colorado. And also, I want you to go to this website called Due Date Too Late. That's Due Date Too Late. And also this website called Colorado Freedom Force. And you can find out more information about things that are happening right here in Colorado. So let you know that. Well, I just read this book, and I haven't finished it yet, but I got so interested in things that they were saying in this book that I didn't know. And I love history, but unfortunately in American history we're only taught half-truths. And if you could see, you can go out and you can find out more about the truths. But because I couldn't see, and my eyes would get tired after maybe 5 minutes of reading, and I had to get very close to it. At the time when I was being fed this history lesson, I couldn't go to the library and go deeper, because I had to go find someone physically and say, can you come to the library with me and read this for me? And then even if I did find someone, they would get tired and say, hey, I'm tired of reading, can I go home? And unless I was paying them, which I didn't have the money to pay them, that was the end of the reading session. So I had to really be selective in when I did get a person to come down and read something from that you couldn't find for the recording for the blind or something like that. When I found someone who could do that, I had to be selective and say, okay, I'm interested in entertainment, music, what artist wrote this song, what was the genesis of creating the song. So I had to be selective in the people that I found. Then when I finally learned how to read Braille, there were very limited books about different things that I was interested in, and I wasn't a very fast Braille reader. But I would take these big books, these big 2-volume books home with me, and I would read those, and it might take me like what would take you maybe a day to read, maybe 2 days, maybe. It would take me 3 weeks to read because of the slowness of my reading. And so when I would get home from working at the radio station or something like that, I would start reading these long books in Braille, and it was very limited because you could only read the bestseller books. You couldn't explore something that was just not a bestseller, but it was something that you were interested in. So that gives you the background of my sort of like a journey off into reading. And I remember when I was probably 13, I would listen to very explicit books, and my favorite brother Warren, he would hear that and say, does Mom know that you're reading these books? Because I said, no, Mom is not a reader, and she probably wouldn't even care. And the only time that she did care was when I brought home a Richard Pryor album, and I took off the earphones because I just wanted to hear it in the open, and he was using some of the same foul words that she used, but she got upset that this comedian was using those same words, and she said, if I would have known that you were going to listen to music or listen to people that talk like that, I would have never bought you that record player. But he had the same filthy talk, cuss words that she had. But it was okay for her to say those words, but it wasn't okay for Richard Pryor to say these words, which I thought was very hypocritical. And as young people, we find a lot of hypocrisy about what adults do. They say, do what I say, don't do what I do. And even with my own kids, it's like, I realize that, they're gonna do what they see, and if my living contradicts what I say, they're gonna pick up on how I'm living it, not how I'm saying it. And so that's just the thing of life. But anyway, I read this book called White Houses, and let me make sure I got the name. It was released in 2018.
By the time she meets
Elenor Roosevelt,
who's back, but she has managed to become an eminent journalist.
And
grew up poor in rural South
this lady,
1932.
Lorena Hickok, who was a journalist back in 1932, a long time when Elenor Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt were president, Democrats presidents. I knew Franklin Roosevelt. He had, much like Bill Clinton, he had a lover behind the scenes. Maybe just one. Bill Clinton had an army of lovers, Democrat Bill Clinton. And we don't know exactly the Bushes, or Ronald Reagan. He was an actor, so he probably had an unusual background in his life. Nancy Reagan liked to read the astrology books to him, and so we thought that was kind of unusual. John F. Kennedy, with him having Marilyn Monroe on the side, and who knows who else. These are things that we find out like years later. And so I guess maybe it was written in the will that she wouldn't release this book until after she had died, right? So that's why maybe that's why it came out, which I'm going to do a little bit of history on that, and because this is going to take me more than one show to do this. expose. And as I say, for my past lesbian and bisexual friends, my past relatives that have been gay, it was just, I never knew why I was, because my mother and my dad kept us they kept us away from a lot of stuff that was happening in the world. And I say, thank God that we have parents that didn't bring home like crazy books and stuff like that, and didn't expose us to the craziness that was happening in the world. And they pretty much protected us. And some people will say, well, that protection helped you, and some people say, no, that protection really didn't equip you for what you would find out when you got out there in the world. And so once I did get out there, and I didn't start learning this stuff until I was 38 years old, and I started meeting unusual people, because the world I was living in up until then was very, very generic, somewhat cloudy, because my vision was very cloudy. And so I couldn't just look around and see, oh, these people are like this, or this person's like that. But I heard stories, and because I had the phone as my outlet, I talked to these people. There used to be a line here in Denver, Colorado, called just a talk line, and young people would get on this line. And at that time, I met, I didn't meet, but I talked to a homosexual priest. Now, back in those days, we didn't know that there were priests in the ministry that were homosexual. We just thought, there were guys that they renounced their sexuality because they loved God so much, and whoever they were before, they cut off that life and they dedicated it to God. Well, I found out that at the tender age of 17 that this priest that I heard on talk radio, and everybody just loved this guy and said, oh, Padre, you're so wonderful because you dedicated your life to God. But in real life, Padre was looking for 17-year-old naive boys like myself to have rendezvous with. But I wasn't having it because I was firmly into heterosexuality. And I had a sense that I had seen in my family, I had seen a guy he was a preacher, and his two daughters were so strange. They didn't talk to anybody. They would sit very proper, ate with their pinky finger out. When they drink their tea, they had their pinky finger out, and they were so proper as 17 and 18-year-old girls. Then this guy was because in the black community, because of the raping of many black people by white slave owners, we had different skin colors. We had high yellow, we had reddish brown, we had different skin colors, which I didn't understand that at the time because nobody was really telling me about the history of how the slave owners raped many of the black women back in those days. And but this book, what I just read, White Houses, it just confirms what I already knew, what I found out later, just through research and just talking to people that know what was going on. So when this guy came into our house, he was a preacher, and he was kind of preaching in Denver, and I guess he was a cousin. And so our parents opened the house to him, and he had adopted this darker black boy, and I didn't understand how come he's light-skinned, the preacher, his daughters are light-skinned, but he had the son that was very dark-skinned, even darker than I am, if you could believe that. And so I didn't know about adoption. So when he says, this is my son, well, of course, that was his son, but by adoption. And this young man introduced to one of my family members homosexuality, right? So I hear some gay people say, I was born this way. And I have a question about that, because two occasions I saw where an older homosexual person got a hold of a younger person and introduced them to that lifestyle. And because of that mind, because of the mind is open to different things at an early, very impressionable at those early ages, you can change their views on their sexuality. That's why I think that Governor Polis and his crew are trying to get to the young people. It's a communistic type of view where if you can get to the kids and you can get them indoctrinated, then you have control of the future and the narrative that will be after that. That's nothing new. I mean, this is done throughout history. If you can get to the young people, even in Africa, they were still kids from other tribes, and they will say, okay, they will put a gun in their hand and say, hey, you're going to fight for us because we're taking care of you now. I have a friend who's married to a guy from Cambodia, and when he was 13, he was put in that situation where they put a gun in his hand and say, you're going to fight for us. But he got out of the situation, became a refugee of America, and ended up marrying my friend, and they have been married to this very day. But when I talked to him, he could tell me stories that would raise your head about a 13-year-old boy, having to shoot and kill other people, and you just been in this world for like 12, 13 years. And now you have a gun and you're shooting at these people. So, I mean, I talked to him and he opened up my eyes to stuff that you don't hear it on the news. It was no news outlet back in the 70s, 80s, or the 90s and that would tell you these truths. Now we have a lot of information. So my friend and his wife, I'm so proud of them, because they have, all marriages have problems and stuff like that, but they hung in there with each other and raised 3 successful kids, and kids that are going to college when he went to college, because he was just a very intelligent person. His wife, even though she was intelligent, she stopped going to school because her grandfather died, and he was the one who was encouraging her to go to school. So when he died, she stopped going to school. And I can't get that to my head. Why would you stop going to school just because one person who encouraged you to go to school died? How can you reach inside yourself and say, hey, that's what my grandfather would have wanted, so let me continue this? But everybody's not like me. I love school. I enjoyed it, and pretty much nobody was really encouraging me. Well, my mother was, and my dad was kind of like quiet, but I knew that he wanted that, But it was just interesting how people, course of life. But she was smart enough to get with a guy who was very intelligent, and he was making crazy money because he knew computers, and he went to school and he learned those computers back in the day before the computers were even popular. He knew how to program, and so they lived a very good life until he had a stroke, and then just other things happened. So anyway, so it was okay. So if you just joined us, this is Johnny J, Intervision FM, and I'm talking about a book I just read called White Houses, but I'm giving you a background for if you're a lesbian or a gay person, to show you that I really don't care if this is your lifestyle or whatever. I'm just giving you my observations as a blind person as I've gone along. I've also met the LGBTQ, the queer, through this phone line, where I was talking to this one person who was a half and half, for real. It wasn't surgical, and I remember talking to this half and half, and she was at a wedding, it called me up and said, you know, I feel very unusual. I feel just out of place. I'm here at this wedding, and so I got to look inside people's lives, and for some reason, they trusted me to look in their lives, and they would feel uncomfortable. There was no cell phones back then, so they had to physically pick up a phone, and I just happened to be at home, and they said there was nobody there to talk to at the wedding, but they were invited to the wedding, and they were telling me how they were feeling and what was going on at the wedding, and I didn't know that this was unusual. It was just a person that found that because I didn't judge them, I didn't say, oh, that's bad that you're half and half, that you have both organs and that's freaky, because I was a freak because people treated me because of my skin color, because of my vision. I was a freak, so I can understand and that's in society at the time, in the 70s, 80s, other people that were considered to be freaks. Okay? So, and like I know, I just know this is going to be two shows because we're so many minutes into this, and it's just, you know, I'm just setting. Well, we're in 21 minutes into this, and I'm setting this up for you. So when I read this book, and I knew Franklin, I didn't know him because I wasn't even born then, but I had read about Franklin D Roosevelt, and I sort of knew that he had his, you know, his lover on the side, whatever. But I didn't know about his wife, and I knew that she was a rebel. But you know, you don't start out as a rebel. You don't start out as a good speaker, and usually the wife is in the background, and the husband is, because he's running for president, he's in the forefront. So when I read this book, I said, well, if he was doing what he was doing, what was the wife doing, right? Just like in Hillary Clinton's position, if Bill Clinton was doing what Bill Clinton was doing, what was Hillary Clinton doing? And we probably won't find out until after I'm dead and gone, and the grand, you know, maybe, you know, Chelsea Clinton will write the book and whatever and say this was happening behind the scenes, right? And you know who Donald Trump is. Before we have a lady on our doing radio on KNUS who says that she was in the beauty pageant, and all the girls said, you know, when he was, because he was the producer of this, they said, don't be around Donald Trump because he loves beautiful women, and if you're around him, he's bound to, you know, lavish you with gifts and take you out and blind you with all these things. And he was single at the time, so so she knew to stay away from Donald Trump doing this competition because of who the other girls knew he was and who he was at that time, a rich man with money and who loved beautiful women. Which, hey, Donald Trump, that's a lot of guys. Guys are visual, women, they tell us, are a little bit deeper than that, but guys are visual. And if you got the money and you got the charisma, that's what you do. In America, maybe it's different in other countries. Maybe they're so upper brow, they are just above the nuances of America. But okay, I doubt it. Okay, so as I was reading this book and found out about Elenor Roosevelt, I didn't. Now they say that she was lesbian, and I'm thinking like maybe she was bisexual, but maybe in those days, if you're rich, of course you're in a circle of rich people, and you had to marry within those circles of rich, because I figure like Franklin Roosevelt came from a rich family, she came from a rich family, and so therefore the marriage was arranged that these two would get married. I didn't get into that part. The book didn't get into that part, but I could probably read and find out more about that. And if you're a historian, if you could read that stuff too, because I just found it interesting. So when Elenor Roosevelt, and she was a very proper lady. She drank her tea with her pinky out, and she knew all the proper etiquette of how to eat like a human being, a upper brow, classy woman in this world, right? And not compared to us other people, poor people, or as they used to call us back in those days, Negroes, who probably licked our fingers, and we were so animalistic and so improper, you know. Some of us was, because there were some black people that were upper class and brow, and you know, their stuff didn't smell as they thought that, you know, they had that same attitude, because being in the black community, I met the upper brow and the middle class and the lower brow. And so I understand all three levels because I've been around all three levels of people, black and white, brown, yellow, red, what have you. So I'm able to understand all these groups of people as I observe them, as they observe me, and they look down at me with their nose and say, how lowbrow you are, and I'm so heavily up here, you know. BS. But anyway, and it cracks me up because people, maybe because I'm vision impaired, they tell me stuff, and I didn't know it was unusual until I started talking to other people and saying, you know, no other people know about this. But in reading this book and learning about Elenor Roosevelt and how this relationship started, and it's a bestseller, so you know, if you are into just finding out the realness about America, as America tries to pretend back in those days that it was something that it wasn't. And America, you know, it's a great place, and I couldn't be doing the things I'm doing in America. I couldn't do it in any other country, I believe. To have the things I have here in other places in Europe and other places, it just wouldn't happen. You know, having access to the media like I have here in America, in other countries, it just would not happen. So I'm blessed to be here in the United States of America because I've had more opportunities than anybody I know in other countries. And I know musicians in other countries and who are blind or disabled or whatever. And the opportunities compared to my opportunities, totally different. But getting back to Elenor Roosevelt, and like I said, we're gonna have to go into the second part so I can really get into it. I just needed to set this up so you understand where I'm coming, a little bit of where I'm coming from. We're at 28 minutes. If you're just joining us, you're watching Innovation FM. I'm talking about this book called White Houses. The White House. If you ever heard of the Funkadelics Parliament group, they call it the White House now, but we're going to call it the Chocolate City, right? And if you know the Parliament and the Funkadelic, go back to their albums in the 70s, and you will understand what I mean by that. And the music is accessible. Just look at Parliament 1970 hits, and you'll see what I'm saying. So this is the intro of this, and I'm going to spend probably another show, but I need to give you a background. And I want you to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell, so you'll be notified whenever we go with new shows. Channel 56, 8 o'clock on Wednesdays, and on KUBL 92.9 on the FM dial every Friday, 6 p.m., Sundays at 9 a.m., and then on KUHS Denver 1 to 3. I do my top 20 countdown and other shows. Give us a call, 720-324-7276, 978. Our website, innovationfm.com, innovationrecords.org. We'll see you on the next show as I do part 2 of this book about Elenor Roosevelt and Miss Hitchcock, her lesbian lover. For Innovation FM, this is Johnny J. See you the next time.